Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi Mom Nadia and my friends. We are from group 4. I'm Ima Maghfiroh and my friend Elisa, Fatimatuzzahro and Dwi Safitri Mariesta. We will present the result of our discussion. Implication for teaching. There are three core issues need to be addressed in planning speaking activities for an English class. The first is determine what kind of speaking skill the class will focus on. The second is identifying teaching strategies to teach. And the last procedures for determining needs include observation of learners carrying out different kind of communicative tasks, questionnaires, interview, and diagnostic testing. Teaching talk as interaction. Talk as interaction is perhaps the most difficult skill to teach since interactional talk is very complex and subtle phenomenon that takes place under the control of unspoken rules. For example, there are naturalistic dialogue, making small talk, recounting personal incident and experience, reacting to what others say. Making small talk. Instead, interaction with a comment concerning something in the immediate vicinity or that both participants have knowledge of. And giving feedback involves responding to a conversational partner with expressions that indicate interest and a wish for the speaker to continue. And then is the example of small talks. Nice weather today. Yes, it is. I hope the weather is nice for the weekend. Me too. The buses to school are always so crowded. Yes, they are. And the next is giving feedback. I'm going to Hawaii for my next vacation. Really? Yeah, my parents are taking me there are a graduation present. Sounds good. And what do you plan to do there? Well, I guess I'll spend a lot of time on the beach. That is interesting, but I also want to do some snorkeling. Giving feedback is another important aspect of talk as interaction. It involves responding to a conversational partner with expressions that indicate interest and a wish for the speaker to continue. Okay, and the next will deliver by Dwi Safitri Mariesta. Expressions that indicate interest and a wish for the speaker to continue. Okay, and the next will deliver by Dwi Safitri Mariesta.
And now we will discuss about teaching talk as transaction. Talk as transaction is more easily planned since current communicative materials are a rich resource of group activities, information gap activities, and role plays that can provide a source for practicing how to use talk for sharing and obtaining information, as well as for carrying out real world transactions. These activities include ranking, values clarification, brainstorming, and simulation. Group discussion activities can be initiated by having students work in groups to prepare a short list of controversial statements for others to think about. Role play activities are another familiar technique for practicing real world transcription and typically involve the following steps. 1. Preparing, like reviewing vocabulary, real world knowledge related to content and context of the role play. 2. Modeling and eliciting, like demonstrating the stage. They are typically involved in the transcription, eliciting suggestion for how its stage can be carried out, and teaching the functional language needed for its stage. 3. practicing and reviewing, like assigning students roles and practicing a role play using cue cards or Relia to provide language and other support. An issue that arises in practicing talk as transcription using different kinds of communicative tasks is the level of linguistic accuracy that students achieve when carrying out these tasks. One assumption is that the form will largely look after itself with incidental support from the teacher. As students carry out communicative tasks, the assumption is that they engage in the process of negotiation of meaning, employing strategies such as comprehension checks, confirmation checks, and clarification requests. These are believed to lead to a gradual modification of learners' language output, which over time takes on more and more target-like forms. The following example of the quality of language that is sometimes produced as students practice transactional function of language. This example was observed during a role play task in a Spanish secondary school English lesson. One student is playing the role of doctor and the other a patient, and they are discussing a health problem. This example shows how low-level students, when carrying out communication tasks, often rely on a lexicalized system of communication that depends heavily on vocabulary and memorized chunks of language, as well as both verbal and nonverbal communication strategies to get meaning across. Several methods can be used to address the issue of language accuracy when students are practicing transactional use of language. 1. By predicting certain linguistic forms that can be used while completing a task. 2. By reducing the complexity of the task. 3. By giving adequate time to plan the task. And 4. By repeated performance of the task. Okay, the next material will be explained by the next presenter. See you!
Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fatimatuzzahro, and in here I'm a next presenter. And now we've talked about pre-task activities. In the pre-task activities, the teacher will present what will be expected of the students in the task space. And in here, I will explain about introduction to topic and tasks. First, teacher helps students to understand the theme and objectives of the text. For example, brainstorming ideas with the class using pictures, meme, or personal experience to introduce the topic. Second, student might do a pre-task. Third, student can be given preparation time to think about how to do the task. Fourth, student can hear a recording of a parallel task being done. This is done during it does not provide a solution to the problem. And the last, if the task is based on a text, student read a part of it. This is in order to make easier for students to do their tasks. And now we have talked about the task cycle. There are 3 task cycles. First is task, second is planning, and third is report. Now we have talked about the task. First, the task is done by students in pairs of group. This may be in response to reading a text or hearing a recording. Second, teacher walks around and monitors. Third, teacher help a student to formulate what they want to say. It means that students are given freedom of expressions and speech when working on. Fourth, the emphasis is on spontaneous, exploratory talk and confidence building within the privacy of the small group. And the last, success in achieving the goals of the task helps student motivation. And now, we'll talk about planning. First, planning prepares students for the next stage. Second, students draft and rehearse what they want to say or write. Third, teacher goes around to advise students on language. Fourth, if the reports are in writing, teacher can encourage peer editing and use of dictionaries. Fifth, the emphasis on clarity, organization, and accuracy as appropriate for a public presentation. And the last, individual students often take this chance to ask questions about specific language items. At this planning stage, the teacher is very pay attention to the accuracy of student in the speaking and trying or repeat the pronunciation in the language English until precise and clear. And now we've talked about report. Report. First, teacher asks some pairs to report briefly to the whole class so everyone can compare findings or begin a survey. Teacher chairs comment on the content of group reports, represses perhaps, but gives no overt public correction. In short, students or groups presented the results already be done, while teacher and other group pay close attention after finished. And then the teacher gives comments, then asks students to improve error or lack thereof. Okay, now we've talked about the language focus of task. First is analysis. Analysis. Teacher sets some language focus tasks. Based on the task student read or on the transcript of recording they heard. Example include the following: find words and phrase related to the topic or text. Read the transcript, find word ending in S and say what the S means. Find all the words in the simple past form, say which refer to past time and which do not. Underline and classify the questions in the transcript. Second, teacher goes around to help student. Third, in plenary, teacher then reviews the analysis, possibly listing a relevant language on the board. And now we've talked about the language focus in practice. Teacher conducts practice activities as needed based on the language analysis work already on the board or using example from the text or transcript. practice activities can include: first, choral repetition of the parts identified and classified. Second, memory challenge games based on partially created example or using lists already on a blackboard for progressive selections. Third, sentence completions based sentence set by one team for another. Fourth, matching the past tense verb jumbled with the subjects and or object they had in the text. And the last, dictionary reference with the from text or transcript. Okay, I think enough for me, and the next presentation will deliver my friends. Okay, see you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we are talking about teaching talk as performance. Teaching talk as performance requires a different teaching strategy. This approach involves providing examples or models of speeches, oral presentations, stories, and etc. through video or audio recordings or written examples. Then, questions such as the following guide this process. Here we have: what is the speaker's purpose? Who is the audience? What kind of information does the audience expect? How does the talk begin, develop, and end? What moves or stage are involved? And last, is any special language used? Okay, next. Phrase and choices approach. Phrase and choices approach. Teaching explicitly about the structures and grammatical features of spoken and written text. Linking spoken and written text to the cultural context of their use. Designing units of work that focus on developing skills in relation to text. Then, providing students with guided practice as they develop language skill for meaningful communication through whole text. Next. Phrase and choices description, a text-based lesson process. There are 3 phases. And now, phase 1, building the context. Building the context are introduced to the social context of an authentic model of the text type being studied. Building the context explore features of the general cultural context in which the text type is used and the social purposes the text type achieves. Building the context explore the immediate context of situation by investigating the register of a model text that has been selected or the basis of the course objectives and learner need. Next, now we are talking about exploration of register of the building context. An exploration of register involves building knowledge of the topic of the model text and knowledge of the social activity in which text is used. Then, understanding the rules and relationships of the people using the text and how these are established and maintained. And last is understanding the channel of communication being used. Context building activities include presenting the context through pictures, audiovisual materials, relief, excursions, field trips, guest speakers, and etc. Establishing the social purpose through discussions or surveys and more. Cross-cultural activities such as comparing differences in the use of the text in 2 cultures. And last, comparing the model text with other texts of the same or contrasting style. Okay, now we are talking about the phase 2. The phase 2, modeling and deconstructing the text. Modeling and deconstructing the text investigate the structural pattern and language features of the model. Then, compare the model with other examples of the same text type. Now, we are going to talk about the phase 3. Phase 3, joint construction of the text. Students begin to contribute to the construction of whole examples of the text type. Then, the teacher gradually reduces the contribution to the text construction. Joint construction activities include teacher questioning, discussing, and editing whole class construction, then scribing onto board or overhead transparencies. Skeleton text, jigsaw and information cat activities, small group construction of tests, and the last, self-assessment and peer assessment activities. Now, we're talking about phase 4. Phase 4, independent construction of the text. Students work independently with the text. Learner performance are used for achievement assessment. Independent construction activities include listening task, listening and speaking task, reading task, and writing task. Now, we're going to talk about the phase 5. Phase 5, linking to related texts. Other texts in the same or similar context, future or past cycles of teaching and learning. Linking to related text activities include comparing the use of the text type across different fields, researching other text types used in the same field, role-playing what happens if the same types is used by people with different roles and relationships, comparing spoken and written modes of the same text type, researching how a key language feature used in this text type is used in other text type. Okay, last, we're talking about evaluating performance on speaking activities. Different speaking activities such as conversations, group discussions, and speeches make different types of demands on learners. They require different kinds and levels of preparation and support, and different criteria must be used to assess how well students carry them out. Assessment criteria, clarity of presentation, use of discourse markers, repetitions, and stress to emphasize important points and to make the lecture structure more salient to the listeners. Okay, I think enough, and thank you very much for your attention and apologize for all of our mistakes.